There is a sign that appears to the watchful soul, a number 1111, and it is no idle chance. It is the knocking of abundance at your inner door. In that moment, if you know what to do, the floodgates of supply will open, and within the hour, you will see its shadow cast upon the world. Tonight, I shall show you how to meet it and receive from it without limit. Prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that there shall not be room enough to receive it. When you hear those words, do not think of some far-off deity in the clouds, watching to see if you are worthy. Hear instead the voice of your own being, the eternal, I am, within, speaking to itself. This is not the voice of a stranger. It is the voice that has been with you from the beginning, before the first breath, before the first memory. When it says, "Prove me now," it is inviting you into the most sacred of experiments, to test the power of your own assumption, to stand inside the feeling of fulfillment and see whether the outer world will not bend to match it. This proving is not to convince the infinite, it is to convince yourself. The infinite already knows who you are. It is you who have forgotten. Consider for a moment the phrase, the windows of heaven. Heaven, in the language of the Spirit, is not some distant starry realm. It is the realm of fulfilled desire, the state in which you are already what you wish to be. The windows of heaven are simply the openings in consciousness through which the invisible flows into the visible. When your mind is open, when your heart is open, the blessing pours through as naturally as water through a channel. No effort, no strain, only the stillness of knowing. When you are told that the Lord of hosts will pour you out a blessing, understand that this pouring is not done with coins from a vault or notes from a treasury. It is poured from the great storehouse of your own imagination. Every blessing you have ever received began as an unseen seed within you. Long before the gift was placed in your hand, it was felt in your heart, heard in your inner ear, seen in your mind's eye. The outer gift is simply the shadow cast by that inner reality. There was a man I knew who read this scripture and took it not as poetry but as law. He had a debt so large it kept him awake at night, a debt that no ordinary means could erase in the time he wished. One evening, weary of calculation, he said aloud to himself, "Prove me now." He closed his eyes and imagined a letter in his hand. He felt its texture, the weight of paper, the slight crease where the envelope had been opened. Inside was a check. No, not just a check, but a check for more than enough to clear every debt and leave him in surplus. He read the figure in his mind until it felt like memory, not fantasy. For 3 nights he did this, never with strain, never with doubt, simply in the quiet joy of already having received. On the 4th day, without request, a relative he had not seen in years sent him a gift from an old estate settlement, the amount to the penny as he had imagined, and then some. This is the meaning of "Prove me now." It is not about testing the generosity of another. It is about allowing the eternal law to reveal itself in your own experience. "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts." If the silver and the gold belong to the I am within, then they belong to you, for you are not separate from that I am. When you accept this, you stop seeing wealth as something to be earned through toil alone and begin to see it as a state to be assumed, a state that will express itself through whatever channels are most fitting. You may say, "But I have tried to believe before, and nothing came of it." To that I answer, belief is not a passing thought, not a moment's wish. It is a sustained assumption, held without effort as though it were already fact. You do not plant a seed and dig it up the next day to see if it is growing. You plant it, you water it with feeling, you let the sun of your attention warm it, and you rest in the certainty that it will bear fruit. The blessing poured out is the fruit, the assumption is the seed. I once spoke with a woman who desired a home of her own. She had no savings, no visible means of acquiring it, And yet she felt the ache of that desire every day. She read the scripture and for the first time understood that the Lord was not far away, but within her own consciousness. So she began to live in that house in her imagination. Night after night, she walked up the front steps, felt the key in the lock, heard the familiar creak of the door as it opened. She arranged the furniture in her mind. She sat in the armchair and felt the quiet satisfaction of ownership. Weeks passed, and then quite suddenly, a friend who was moving abroad offered her a home fully paid for, asking only that she keep it in good care. She had not asked for this in words. She had asked in the only language the law understands, assumption clothed in feeling. When the scripture says that there shall not be room enough to receive it, it speaks to the overflowing nature of this law. You may think you are asking for one thing, yet when the blessing comes, it often brings more than you could have named. The channels through which it arrives are infinite. You may look for it in one direction, but it will come through another so that you cannot mistake its source. And when it comes, it often bears the unmistakable fragrance of grace, that quality of gift which no human calculation could have arranged. Now, some will say, but is it not dangerous to believe in such abundance? Will I not be disappointed if it does not come? To that I say, it is not belief that disappoints, it is the clinging to appearances that disappoints. Appearances are but the current harvest of past assumptions. If you desire a different harvest, plant a different seed. To prove me now is to take your attention off the field as it is and to see it already golden with the crop you wish to reap. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot at once believe in lack and in abundance. Choose ye this day whom ye will serve. Let us take an even simpler example. A child seeing a sweet upon the table does not question whether it is for him. He takes it as part of his world. In the same way, when you truly know that all silver and gold belong to the I Am within, you take the good you desire as part of your inheritance. You are not stealing it. You are not begging for it. You are receiving what has always been yours. The child does not lie awake wondering if the sweet will vanish in the night. He enjoys it as his own. This is the simplicity of faith. The windows of heaven are not opened by force. They are opened by alignment. Alignment of feeling, of thought, of assumption. When you dwell in the feeling of already having, you are in tune with the state called heaven. And from that state, the outer world reshapes itself to mirror what you have claimed within. This reshaping is inevitable, as certain as the rising of the sun. It may come swiftly, or it may come through a series of seemingly natural events, but come it will. There is a rhythm to these blessings. First, the desire arises. That is the voice of your own being calling you upward. Then, the assumption is made. You clothe yourself in the feeling of fulfillment. Then, the outer rearrangement begins, often without your knowledge. People you have never met begin to move, circumstances align, delays dissolve, and the way opens. By the time the blessing reaches your hands, the work has long been done in the unseen. The outer is merely the final act of a play that began within. And so, when you hear the words, "Prove me now," hear them as a personal challenge from your own deepest self. Do not put it off to another day. Begin where you are with what you have. If you desire a sum of money, see it in your possession now. If you desire freedom from a debt, feel the relief now. If you desire a home, live in it now. Let the reality within be so vivid that when the outer matches it, you feel not surprise but recognition. For you have been there already. You have handled the blessing in the secret place. You have tasted it, touched it, heard it in the silence. You will find that as you practice this, your confidence in the law will grow. At first, you may wonder if it can be so. Then, after one or two proofs, you will begin to trust. In time, you will know with a certainty beyond words that there is no limit to the blessings that can be poured out. Save the limit you set in your own imagination. The storehouse is infinite, the supply unending, the channels beyond counting. The only question is, will you stand in the state of receiving, or will you remain in the state of longing? This scripture is not a promise for some far-off day. It is an invitation for now. The Lord of hosts, your own I am, speaks to you this moment. Prove me now. It does not say, wait until you are worthy. It does not say, wait until the world changes. It says no. For the blessing is already prepared. It waits only for your acceptance. The windows of heaven stand ready to open. It is your assumption that turns the key. And when the blessing pours out, it will come not in trickles but in floods, so that you marvel at how quickly the outer bowed to the inner. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine. This is not a metaphor to be admired and then set aside. It is a statement of present fact. The silver is yours, and the gold is yours, if you will but claim it in the only place it can be claimed, in the deep of your own consciousness. Claim it there, and soon you will hold it here. And when you do, you will understand that the words of the scripture were never about testing another. They were about discovering yourself. Every vision impressed upon the deep of man becomes fact in the outer world. This is the law, unchanging and without respect of persons. It does not consider the one who applies it more worthy than another. It simply yields to the state that is most vividly assumed. The world you see is nothing more than a mirror, reflecting faithfully the sum of your inner conceptions. No act, no circumstance, no condition in your life has arrived without first being sown in the soil of your consciousness, whether you sowed it knowingly or in ignorance. When the sign comes before your eyes, the hour strikes not on a clock but in the heart. It is the appointed moment to plant deliberately, to impress upon the inner mind the image of what you desire, as though it were already an accomplished fact. The deep within you is not moved by idle wishes, it is moved by the sensation of reality. In that moment you must act inwardly as one who already has. You do not bargain, you do not plead, for the one who pleads declares they do not yet possess. Instead, you enter the state of possession so fully that there is no room for asking. Only the quiet gratitude of one who has received. There was a merchant who, during a time of great scarcity, saw his trade dwindling. He feared that within weeks his store would close. One evening, as he sat at his desk calculating his losses, he remembered the principle, every outer fact is preceded by an inner state. He pushed away the papers, closed his eyes, and imagined the shop filled with customers, the sound of the till ringing, the shelves being restocked, and himself smiling with the easy confidence of a man whose trade was flourishing. He did this not with effort, but with the natural ease of a memory recalled. Within days, a sudden demand for his goods arose from a nearby district. His stock was emptied, and new orders had to be placed. He had done nothing in the outer to cause this, but in the inner, he had already lived it. This is the meaning of the inner law, to dwell in the state desired until it hardens into fact. The unseen is the reality, the seen is but its shadow. Most live in the shadow, taking it as cause, when in truth it is only effect. The cause is always the state you occupy in consciousness. You cannot remain in the state of lack and at the same time bring forth abundance. You cannot inwardly dwell in sickness and outwardly manifest health. You cannot hold to a self-concept of limitation and see freedom expressed. The state you inhabit within will clothe itself in the circumstances of your life without. Do not mistake a passing fancy for a true assumption. To assume a state is to make it so real to yourself that it becomes the very atmosphere in which you live. You may be walking in the same old street, meeting the same old people, but inwardly you are in another country altogether, the land of your fulfilled desire. You look at the same faces, yet you see them from a new vantage point, as one who already has what once was longed for. And because you have changed your dwelling place within, the outer will soon change its scenery to match. I recall a man who desired a position in a company far above his current station. All logic and every outer fact declared it impossible, for he had no formal education and no one to recommend him. But he understood the inner law. He began each night to enter into the state of already holding that position. He imagined himself sitting at the desk, using the office stationery, being addressed by his name with the title he desired. He did not concern himself with how it would happen. The how belongs to the unseen. Within 2 months, a vacancy opened, and a series of unusual events brought him into the very post he had claimed inwardly. His employer later confessed that the decision was made on a feeling about him. Yet that feeling was nothing but the reflection of the state he had been projecting all along. This law moves in perfect silence. The subconscious mind, which is the womb of creation, accepts the impressions you give it and brings them forth in its own mysterious way. It is not swayed by appearances. It takes the feeling as the fact. If you impress it with fear, it will bring forth the thing you fear. If you impress it with the joy of fulfillment, it will bring forth the very scene you have inwardly accepted. This is why the sign, when it comes, must be treated as the cue to plant the right seed. For a sign without action is like a field without sowing. Nothing will be reaped. The action required is not physical but imaginative. The moment you step into the assumption that you already are what you desire to be, you have acted. This inner act is the true sowing, and like any seed, it contains within it the complete pattern of its own fulfillment. Just as the acorn holds within itself the image and destiny of the oak, so your assumption holds within itself the entire unfolding of your desire. You may not see the sequence, but you will see the result. Do not confuse this with mere daydreaming. A daydream is detached, a passing entertainment. An assumption is possessed. You hold it, live in it, breathe it, until it becomes more real than what your senses report. Your senses will try to contradict it. The world will try to remind you of facts. But the law is not concerned with current facts. It is concerned only with the state you persist in. Persist, and the facts will rearrange themselves to agree with you. There was a woman who longed for a sum of money to free her from a burden that weighed upon her for years. She had prayed in the way most do, by repeating her need. Yet nothing came of it. One night she heard the truth that every condition is the outpicturing of an inner state. She decided to test it. Lying in her bed, she imagined holding a check in her hand, feeling the paper, seeing her name written clearly, and above it the amount, far more than enough to meet her need. She did this until she could feel the joy, the relief, the lightness of one already in possession. Within a fortnight, she received word from a solicitor that she had been named in the will of an old friend, the amount almost identical to what she had imagined. This is the law in motion. It does not fail, it cannot fail. The only question is whether you will apply it consciously or allow it to operate through the random and often negative states you occupy. For you are always assuming, whether you know it or not. The state you accept most fully will always be the one expressed. If you continually tell yourself, I am always short of money, you are assuming the state of lack, and the law will faithfully reproduce it. If you tell yourself, I am provided for in every way, and feel it as true, you are assuming the state of abundance, and the law will likewise bring it to pass. It is not enough to say the words, the feeling must accompany them. Words without feeling are like seeds without water. They lie dormant. Feeling is the water that brings the seed to life. When the sign appears, take it as your moment to water the seed of your desire with the deep emotion of fulfillment. Let it soak into you until there is no room for contradiction. Do not be deceived by the passage of time. Some seeds sprout quickly, others take longer, but all bring forth after their kind. If you plant an apple seed, you do not expect an oak tree. If you plant joy, you will not reap sorrow. The outer always matches the inner, without exception. Your task is to hold the inner image steady, unmoved by appearances, until the outer conforms. You will find as you practice this that the world begins to take on a different quality. People respond to you in new ways, opportunities arise where none existed, ideas come to you without strain. This is the outer echo of the state you have assumed within. What you are within is always being broadcast, and the world receives it as instinctively as the ear receives sound. Change the broadcast, and the responses will change accordingly. In truth, the inner law is the only law you need to concern yourself with. Outer laws, outer systems, outer structures, all are but the stage upon which the inner law plays out its scenes. When you understand this, you stop struggling against the outer and begin working exclusively within. And as within, so without, when the inner is right, the outer must follow. It is in this spirit that the sign, when it comes, must be cherished. It is not to be dismissed as coincidence or idle fancy. It is a summons from your deeper self, a reminder that the door stands open if you will but walk through. And to walk through is simply to assume, in that moment, the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The one who learns to do this at will find that life becomes a continual unfolding of desired states into tangible form. There will be no mystery to it, only the quiet wonder of seeing the invisible made visible, the hoped for made real. This is the reward of those who understand and apply the inner law. Close your eyes for a moment and allow the outer world to fade from your awareness. Let the walls of the room dissolve, the sounds grow dim, and the objects before you vanish into a soft and formless mist. You stand now in the one place where all creation begins, in the inner chamber of your imagination. Here there are no limitations, no debts, no lack, no distance between you and what you desire. All things are present here, waiting for you to claim them by the only means they may be claimed, by feeling them as already yours. In this sacred space, vision is not fantasy, it is substance. You may not yet hold the coin in your hand in the outer, but here in the silence, you can feel its cool weight against your palm. You may not yet see the bank balance with your physical eyes, but here you can gaze upon the slip of paper or the account book and see the numbers standing boldly before you. You may not yet hear the voice congratulating you, yet hear the words ring with such clarity that you could swear they were spoken aloud. This is the law of the inner vision day. What is vividly felt and persistently imagined will harden into fact. Take, for example, the one who longed for a sum of money to release him from a chain of obligations. He could have spent his nights turning over figures in his mind, calculating, worrying, rehearsing all the reasons it might never come. Instead, he chose to retire into the theater of imagination each evening. There he sat at an old oak desk, opened a letter, and drew out a check bearing his name. He read the figures until they glowed in his mind like fire. He felt the excitement rise, and he let it flow through his whole body, not with desperate yearning, but with the quiet ecstasy of possession. In the daylight hours, he thought little of it. He had already lived it in the only place where life begins. Within weeks, the very sum appeared through a channel he could never have devised. This is the art of vision and imagination. You must take your desire and dress it in all the sensory richness you can summon. Do not be content with a vague outline. Fill in the colors, the textures, the sounds, the scents, the atmosphere. If you seek wealth, feel the crispness of the notes, hear the rustle as you thumb through them, smell the faint scent of paper and ink, see the way the light catches their edges, and feel the pride and security of one who knows this is but a portion of what is his by right. If you seek a home, do not see only its shape from a distance. Walk through its rooms, feel the carpet beneath your feet, hear the echo of your steps in the hall, breathe the fragrance of polished wood or fresh flowers on the table. Let the scene be so alive that it is no longer something you are making up, but something you are remembering. For this is the great secret. Imagination is memory in advance. You are not pretending, you are recalling from the storehouse of eternity the scene you have chosen to call your own. All creation is finished, every possibility already exists in the unseen. When you imagine, you are selecting one of these finished scenes and bringing it forward into your present awareness. The more vividly you recall it, the more swiftly it takes shape in your outer world. There was a woman who desired to free her family from a life of continual struggle. She began each night, just before sleep, to imagine herself in a bright, cheerful kitchen. On the table before her was a large bowl of fruit, fresh, abundant, colorful. She could hear laughter coming from the other room, the sound of her children playing without worry. She imagined herself placing coins in a jar, not as one scraping together pennies, but as one with more than enough to spare. She did this for weeks, never growing weary, for it was a joy to live in that scene. And then one day, her husband returned from work with news of a promotion, so unexpected it left them both speechless. From that moment, their outer life began to mirror the ease she had long since inhabited within. The key is feeling. A dry, mechanical picture will not do. You may form an image in your mind's eye, but without the emotional conviction that it is already yours, it remains an empty shell. Feeling is the breath that animates the image, the force that draws it from the invisible to the visible. When you can feel the reality of the scene, even for a moment, you have sown the seed. Persist and the seed will grow, for the soil of the subconscious never fails to bring forth that which is planted in it with feeling. Do not concern yourself with how it will come. The how belongs to the unseen, and it works with infinite wisdom, far beyond the limited plans you might devise. Your part is only to dwell in the end, to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, until it is so natural that you no longer reach for it, you rest in it. You do not plant a seed and then tug at it each day to see if it has sprouted. You trust the process. So with your vision. Once you have planted it in the fertile soil of imagination and watered it with feeling, trust that it is growing unseen until the day it breaks forth into view. Some will say, but I cannot see it clearly. My mind wanders. I lose the picture. To this I say, do not be discouraged. Even the faintest image held with feeling will grow in clarity, as a photograph in the darkroom slowly develops until the picture is sharp, so your vision will take on more detail as you persist. Begin where you are. The mere act of turning your attention inward with intention is the beginning of mastery. Let us try an exercise together. Close your eyes now. Imagine that you are standing in a place where you have just received the very sum of money you desire. It may be in your home, at a desk, in a bank, wherever feels most natural to you. See yourself holding the envelope, the bank slip, the check. Feel the paper against your skin. See the numbers written upon it, numbers that make your heart swell with relief and joy. Hear yourself telling someone you trust, it's here, it's all here. See their smile, hear their congratulations. Feel the lightness in your chest, the ease in your breath. Stand in that moment until it feels more real than the chair you sit in. When you open your eyes, do not look for immediate proof. Know that the proof has already been given in the vividness of your inner experience. The outer must follow as day follows night. The law cannot be broken. There was once a man in a small town who desired to own a fine watch, not for vanity, but because to him it symbolized success, punctuality, and self-respect. He could not afford it at the time, but he began each evening to imagine the weight of it on his wrist, the coolness of the metal at first touch, the faint ticking when he held it close to his ear. He even imagined the small adjustment of his cuff to reveal it when meeting someone. After several months, a distant relative who had never met him heard of his reliability through mutual acquaintances and sent him, as a gift, a watch of the very make and style he had imagined. The relative explained that it had belonged to him for years, and he simply felt it should belong to this man instead. This is the mysterious working of the law. Once the vision is firmly impressed, you must become so familiar with your vision that it ceases to feel like a hope and begins to feel like a memory. Memory carries with it a certain ease, a certainty. You do not strain to remember, you simply know. Treat your desire as something you are remembering, and it will slip into your reality with the same inevitability as yesterday follows today. Your imagination is not a toy, it is the creative power itself. Whatever you can vividly imagine and feel to be true, you can experience. The world outside is but the shadow play of the inner world. Change the inner scene, and the outer must follow. This is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of law. And so in this moment, choose the scene that implies your wish fulfilled. Step into it with all the senses awake. See, hear, touch, taste, and smell the reality of it. Feel the joy, the relief, the pride, the gratitude. Let these feelings wash over you until they saturate every part of your being. Then carry that inner knowing with you as you go about your day, not as one who is waiting, but as one who already has. For in the unseen you do already have. And the vision you hold, if you will persist in it with feeling, will become the fact you live tomorrow. Imagine for a moment that the world you see before you is but a great shadow, play, a moving picture cast upon the screen of your mind by the light of your own inner state. Every form, every event, every face you encounter is but an image projected from the unseen realm within you. The outer world is not the cause, but the effect. The cause is always your state of consciousness, that silent, invisible position you occupy within the kingdom of your imagination. If you walk in the state of lack, the scenes before you will faithfully echo that poverty, showing you bills you cannot pay, opportunities that seem to slip away, and a gnawing sense of insufficiency. If, however, you take your dwelling in the state of abundance, the same world transforms, doors open that before were bolted, hands extend to offer, and wealth flows through channels you could never have designed. The world bends to the state you have assumed, for it has no life of its own, it merely reflects the inner arrangement of your mind. This is why it is written, "To him that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance, but from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath." Many stumble over these words, thinking them harsh. Yet they are not a decree of cruelty, but a revelation of law. He that hath refers not to possessions, but to the state of having in consciousness. When you feel yourself already in possession of the good you desire, life will gather to you that which matches this inner fullness. But if you dwell in the state of not having, if your mind is saturated with the conviction of lack, life will take from you even the little you seem to possess, for it cannot contradict the blueprint of your state. I knew a man who, though deeply in debt, would nightly retire into an inner scene in which he held in his hands a thick envelope of currency. He did not see the source. He did not trouble himself with the method. He simply felt the satisfying weight, smelled the scent of fresh notes, and heard the rustle as he counted them slowly in the quiet of his room. Outwardly, nothing changed for some weeks, but inwardly his state shifted. He began to walk with a subtle air of possession, as though the invisible envelope were always near. Within a short time, a forgotten investment matured, yielding more than enough to erase his debt and leave him with an abundance. The outer fact followed the inner state without fail. The state precedes the fact as surely as the seed precedes the plant. You may look at a barren patch of earth and declare it empty, yet beneath the soil lies the unseen seed already drawing to itself the elements it requires. The sprout will appear in its appointed time, not because the soil commanded it, but because the seed carried within itself the pattern of the plant. So it is with your desires. The seed is your assumption. The conviction that your wish is already fulfilled. Once planted in the fertile ground of your imagination, it will, by an unseen process, bring forth the corresponding outer fact. Consider the parable of the prodigal son. When he came to himself, He remembered the abundance in his father's house and rose to return. His outer journey home was but the shadow of his inner return to the state of having. The robe, the ring, the feast, all these outer evidences followed his assumption of sonship and belonging. The father did not send his servants into the far country to find the boy and clothe him there. The garments awaited him in the state to which he returned. You, too, must come to yourself, to the realization that the feast you seek is prepared in the state you have not yet chosen to occupy. Some attempt to change the outer world directly, forgetting that the shadow cannot be grasped or altered except by moving the object that casts it. They labor to rearrange facts without touching the state from which those facts spring. Such efforts exhaust the body and embitter the mind, for the outer scene will always reorganize itself to mirror the unchanged state within. The moment you change the state, however, the world will conspire, often through the most natural and seemingly unrelated means, to express it. I once knew a woman who longed for companionship. She had spent years lamenting her loneliness, rehearsing in her mind the reasons why no one seemed to notice her. The more she dwelt on the state of being unwanted, the more the world faithfully returned to her the evidence of that state. One evening, she decided to abandon the old position. She sat quietly and imagined walking arm in arm with a man who cherished her, feeling the warmth of his presence and hearing his laughter as they strolled through a park. She persisted nightly in this inner companionship. Within 2 months, a friend invited her to a gathering where she met the man who later became her husband. She had not sought him, she had simply inhabited the state in which he already existed. When I speak of state, I do not mean a fleeting mood or a passing fancy. A state is a position of consciousness, a dwelling place of the mind from which you view and experience the world. You may pass through many moods in a day, but the state you habitually occupy will shape the major facts of your life. It is possible to feel moments of joy while dwelling in a state of fear, just as one can feel moments of sorrow while inhabiting a state of overall abundance. The key is not to chase moods, but to choose and remain in the state that matches your desire. Let us turn to the imagery of the vine and the branches, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. The me here is not an external being, but the state of consciousness you wish to embody. If you abide in the state of wealth, it abides in you, and your life bears the fruit of that wealth. If you abide in the state of love, love abides in you, and your world blossoms with affection and harmony. The branch need not strain to bear fruit. It simply remains in the vine, and the life of the vine flows into it naturally. So it is with you. Abide in the state, and the facts will flow from it without effort. You may test this law in small ways, for the law makes no distinction between great and small. If you can change your state and thereby alter the smallest fact of your day, you have proven the principle that governs all facts. Suppose you wish to hear from a friend. Instead of lamenting the silence, take a few moments to enter the state in which you have already received their letter or call. Feel the joy of hearing their voice, imagine the content of their words, and then release it. You will find that life rearranges itself to match the state you have chosen, often through channels you could not have foreseen. The outer world is a mirror, but not a fixed one. It is fluid, reflecting with perfect fidelity the shifting landscapes of your inner state. If the reflection displeases you, do not attack the mirror. Change the image you are casting upon it. Withdraw from the state you no longer wish to see expressed and enter the one you desire. Do this, and the world will have no choice but to show you the new reflection, for it cannot resist the pattern set before it. Even the appearance of delay is but the shadow of your own uncertainty. The moment the state is truly assumed, not hoped for, not wished for, but accepted as reality, the bridge of incidents begins to form. You may not recognize the first steps upon that bridge, for they may appear unrelated to your desire. But if you remain in the state, you will cross the bridge and arrive at the fact as surely as the seed becomes the tree in its appointed season. If you wish to demonstrate this for yourself, choose now a desire that is clear and definite. Do not concern yourself with its possibility. Enter into the state where it is already fulfilled. Live there inwardly, speak from that state, act from that state, and watch as the outer world reshapes itself to conform. For as long as you remain in that state, the facts must align with it. They have no life apart from the state that gives them birth. Would you like me to now continue directly into key point 5 in the same uninterrupted style, so the lecture flows? Faith is not the hope that something may happen if circumstances align. It is the confident knowing that the unseen is already accomplished. When you possess true faith, you do not look to the evidence of the outer world for encouragement, nor do you measure your progress by the changes in your environment. Instead, you hold within yourself the vision already complete, and in that inner possession lies the seed of every outward manifestation. For as long as you keep alive that inner knowing, the outer world must eventually conform, for it is powerless to resist the state that you have assumed. Consider the words. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This is not mere poetry, it is a precise spiritual law. Substance, in this sense, does not refer to a physical matter you can touch or weigh. It is the inner reality that precedes the visible. Evidence, in this sense, is not the proof your senses bring you, but the inner certainty that precedes all proof. To walk in faith is to move in a world that the natural eye cannot yet see, trusting that the inner arrangement will call forth its outer counterpart. I once knew a man whose business appeared to be on the verge of ruin. Orders had ceased, creditors pressed in, his employees whispered of inevitable failure. Yet every night, before sleep, he entered into the feeling of success as though the trouble had never existed. He walked through his store in imagination, hearing the bell of the door as customers entered, feeling the friendly weight of currency in his hands, seeing his shelves full and his staff busy. He did not spend these moments pleading or asking for rescue. He lived in the scene as though it were already a fact. For weeks, outwardly, there was no change. Yet he was unmoved, for inwardly he had already crossed the bridge to abundance. One morning, a large order came in from an unexpected source, soon followed by another and another. Within months, the talk of collapse was forgotten, replaced by talk of expansion. This man's outer life had no choice but to mirror the state he had sustained in faith. Faith sustains you in the interval between imagining and manifesting. The untrained mind despairs in that gap, growing weary when the outer world does not immediately bend. But the disciplined mind understands that the outer is but a shadow of the inner, and the shadow cannot move until the object casting it moves. You are that object. Your inner assumption is that reality. Once you accept the truth of your desire's fulfillment, you no longer look for signs as reassurance, for the only true sign is the feeling itself. If you hold that feeling, you already possess the very thing you seek. Let me tell you of a woman who desired to live in a certain house, a house far beyond what she thought she could afford. She visited it once and allowed herself to be deeply impressed by its warmth, its layout, the view from its windows. Every night, she walked through that home in her mind. She ran her hand along the banister. She felt the sun coming through the curtains in the morning. She even arranged flowers in the vase on the dining table. Friends told her to be sensible, to look for something more within reach. But she did not listen to them. She listened only to the inner scene. A year later, through a series of events she could never have orchestrated, the house became hers, purchased at a fraction of its value. She told me that when she moved in, nothing felt new. It was as though she had always lived there, for in her inner world, she had. This is the act of faith, to so fully accept the end that you live from it now, not toward it. You do not wait to feel prosperous until the money appears. You feel prosperous now, and that feeling clothes itself in form. You do not wait for the letter of reconciliation before feeling the joy of reunion. You feel it now, and in feeling it, you set in motion the unseen currents that bring it to pass. To maintain such faith requires the guarding of the inner conversation. If you speak to yourself words of doubt, if you rehearse the old story of lack or delay, you undo the work of your assumption. Faith is not only the imaginal scene you construct in quiet moments, it is the continual choice to abide in that state when you walk through your day. If the outer world tempts you to contradict it, you close the door to those suggestions and return within. Cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. Confidence here is not arrogance toward others, but steadfastness toward the truth you have accepted in imagination. Faith does not mean you will never feel the tug of the senses trying to persuade you otherwise. But when that happens, you remind yourself that the senses reflect the past, not the present reality of your consciousness. The money that is not yet in your hand, the letter not yet in your mailbox, the opportunity not yet on your calendar. These are only the remnants of an old state. Your task is not to repair or rearrange the remnants, but to dwell entirely in the new state until it alone is reflected back. There is an invisible bridge between the seen and the unseen, and that bridge is faith. It will carry you over every seeming delay, every apparent obstacle, if you refuse to turn back. Many begin the journey but retreat when the wind rises, thinking the bridge may collapse. Yet the bridge is built of your own inner conviction. It cannot fail unless you abandon it. And if you remain step by step, with your gaze fixed on the end, you will arrive, for the bridge has already been completed in the moment you assumed the state. There was once a man in a distant city who owed a debt he could not pay. The due date approached, the sum was large, no possible source of money appeared. Yet he chose to see himself as one who had already met every obligation. He would sit quietly each morning and feel the relief and gratitude of a man entirely free from debt. He imagined the creditor shaking his hand warmly and saying, "All settled." When the day arrived, he walked into the creditor's office with no plan other than his inner certainty. To his astonishment, the creditor informed him that a mutual acquaintance, learning of the debt, had paid it in full as a gift. The man had not asked for this. He had only sustained the feeling of the debt dissolved. The world arranged itself to match his inner acceptance. In this way, faith is both the seed and the harvest. It is the seed when you first plant the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is the harvest when the outer world reflects it. Between the planting and the reaping lies the invisible season where nothing seems to be happening. Yet beneath the surface, the roots grow deep. If you were to dig up the seed daily to check its progress, you would kill it. So it is with faith. You do not examine it each day to see if it is working. You rest in the knowing that it is. The act of faith is a continual communion with the reality you have chosen. It is the quiet refusal to be swayed by appearances, the steady gaze upon the unseen, the inner assent to its truth now. You may walk through streets where every sign tells you it is not so, yet within you, it is already so. And because the inner is the cause and the outer the effect, the outer must eventually take the shape of the inner. If you desire wealth, you must become inwardly wealthy long before the figures in your bank account agree. If you desire health, you must feel the ease and strength of perfect health long before the body gives its testimony. If you desire companionship, you must feel the warmth and joy of that union before you see the face of the one you love. In all things, you must claim the state inwardly first, for faith always precedes the fact. Faith, then, is not a fragile hope. It is the possession of the unseen with such assurance that the seen cannot help but conform. And the world, which may seem so solid and unyielding, is but a shadow waiting for you to move the light within. When you move it, when you shift your inner state, the shadow must change, for it has no power of its own. To awaken to the truth that everything in your life is shaped first in the unseen is to step into the most sacred and transformative of all discoveries. The visible world, with all its solid structures and apparent permanence, is but a shadow, an echo of something far deeper, far more powerful, and far more real. The untrained mind believes that reality begins on the outside and seeps inward, that events happen to it from some distant source beyond its control. But the awakened one knows that the exact opposite is true. The outer world bends to the inner world, form obeys feeling, circumstances follow the command of your persistent assumption. When you look at a tree, you are seeing the end result of something that began as a seed. You may stand in awe of its height, its branches, the shade it gives, but what you cannot see is the invisible process that preceded it, roots spreading through dark soil, tiny cells dividing in silence, an unseen blueprint guiding its growth toward the sky. Life itself follows this order. What is seen was once unseen. The mistake most people make is tending only to the visible leaves of their lives, trying to change results without changing the seed from which they spring. If you desire to change the conditions of your life, you must start where life itself begins, in the realm of thought and feeling. Everything you call reality was once nothing more than an idea clothed with persistence and faith. The clothes you wear, the house in which you live, the money in your bank account, all these first existed in the unseen imagination of someone, whether yours or another's. They were shaped, refined, and brought into form by the invisible laws that govern creation. If this is true for the objects around you, why should it not be true for the circumstances of your own life? Consider the potter's clay. The potter does not begin by staring at finished vessels, waiting for them to appear in his hands. He begins with formless clay and an inner vision of what he intends to create. His mind is fixed on the shape long before his hands make the first turn of the wheel. The unseen image governs the movement of his hands, and every gesture of creation obeys that inner vision. So it is with you. Your life is the clay, and your imagination is the potter. If the form before you is not to your liking, it is not because the clay is flawed, but because the vision shaping it has been neglected, unfocused, or surrendered to fear and doubt. You may protest and say, "But I am not imagining my troubles. They are real." Yet what is real? But that which is sustained in consciousness. The anxious man sustains his fear by imagining loss, by rehearsing in the mind every possible scene of failure until it hardens into experience. The joyous man sustains his delight by imagining abundance, by inwardly hearing words of encouragement and success until life itself echoes them back. What you continually occupy yourself with in thought and feeling will eventually take root and grow, whether you call it good or ill. It is not enough to merely wish for something. A wish is a fleeting thing, easily blown away by the winds of circumstance. Creation demands a deeper engagement, a marriage of thought and feeling so complete that you cannot tell where the idea ends and you begin. You must so completely assume the state desired that it becomes natural as your own name. Then, and only then, does the invisible begin its work of weaving outer circumstances to reflect the inner state. There is an old saying, "As within, so without." It is no poetic flourish, but the statement of a law as certain as gravity. To change your life, you must first change the inner conversation you hold with yourself. Speak inwardly of the wealth you desire as though it is already yours. Walk in the mental atmosphere of the health you long for as though every cell of your body already pulses with vitality. Let your unseen world become so vivid, so real to you that it is more convincing than any evidence the outer world presents. I once knew a man who lived in perpetual scarcity. No matter how hard he worked, money seemed to slip through his fingers. When I asked him to describe how he thought about money, He laughed and said, "I'm always telling myself I can't afford things." In his mind, lack was the default setting. So we began a simple practice. Whenever he caught himself thinking, "I can't afford it," he replaced it with, "I choose what I spend my money on, and I have more than enough." At first it felt false to him, like a coat that did not fit, but he persisted, making the statement inwardly as he walked, as he drove, even as he drifted off to sleep. Within months, opportunities for increased income appeared from places he had never considered, and the constant drain of unexpected expenses ceased. Nothing mystical had happened in the outer sense, yet everything had changed. Why? Because the inner pattern had changed. The unseen root had been nourished with a new belief, and the outer form responded accordingly. The soil of the subconscious will grow whatever seed you plant in it. Plant weeds, and you will have weeds. Plant fruit, and you will have fruit. The choice is always yours, but the harvest is certain. In the unseen realm, there is no delay. The moment you accept an idea as true and feel it to be real, it begins to shape itself in the invisible. The apparent delay you observe in the outer world is only the time it takes for the invisible seed to mature into visible form. Do not mistake this interval for inactivity. A seed hidden in the soil may look lifeless, but within it is an intense, silent work, roots reaching, stems forming, life stirring. Likewise, your assumed state is working, even when the outer world shows no sign of change. Many sabotage themselves by constantly digging up the seed to check if it is growing. They affirm their desire one moment and contradict it the next with worry, doubt, or fear. This is like planting a seed and then uprooting it daily to see if it has sprouted. You must allow the unseen to work without interference. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and persist in it, no matter what outer evidence appears. The outer is not the cause, it is the effect. To quarrel with the effect is to leave the cause untouched. Think of the sculptor who looks at a block of marble and sees, not stone, but a figure waiting to be revealed. He chips away everything that does not belong to the vision he holds in his mind. If you wish to transform your life, you must do the same inwardly. Chip away thoughts that contradict your desired state. Remove inner dialogues of defeat, fear, and limitation, for they have no place in the masterpiece you are creating. The vision, held steadily in the unseen, will compel the outer world to align with it. Life will always mirror back to you the truth of your inner state. If you feel yourself to be poor, life will offer you endless proof of your poverty. If you feel yourself to be rich in spirit, opportunities will find you to express that richness in tangible ways. The outer world is not testing you, it is serving you faithfully and without question, reflecting back the image you hold most deeply within yourself. A woman once told me she had longed for companionship for years, but always found herself alone. As she spoke, her words revealed the invisible cause. She constantly rehearsed in her mind the feeling of being rejected, imagining others turning away from her. I invited her to change the scene she played inwardly. Instead of imagining rejection, she began to imagine herself walking hand in hand with someone who loved her deeply. She imagined conversations filled with warmth, eyes meeting in affection, laughter shared in quiet moments. Though her outer world did not change immediately, her inner world became rich with the feeling of love. In time, that feeling drew to her a man whose presence matched exactly the atmosphere she had created within. This is the great secret of the unseen. You cannot experience in the outer what you have not already accepted in the inner. You may chase after it, struggle for it, grasp at it, but until you have inwardly consented to its reality, it will remain beyond your reach. The moment you feel it to be yours, without needing outer confirmation, it is yours in truth, and the outer world will find its way to deliver it to you. The invisible is the workshop of all creation. Every invention, every work of art, every social change began first as an unseen idea. The same power that shapes nations shapes the details of your personal life. There is no limit to it, except the limit you impose by your refusal to imagine greater things for yourself. Dare to imagine what the world says is impossible. Dare to feel as though the miracle you seek has already occurred. In that daring, you are moving the unseen forces of life to act on your behalf. And so, let it be understood that all you have ever sought has never been outside of you, but has always been the silent treasure within. Every circumstance, every event, every apparent delay was but the shadow cast by your own inner state, awaiting your recognition of its cause. The world is not a prison but a mirror, faithfully reflecting the image you dare to hold in the secret chambers of thought and feeling. To change what you see, you must first change what you are within yourself. To receive, you must first become. You stand at the threshold of infinite possibility with the key already in your hand. That key is your assumption, your willingness to live now as though what you desire is already yours. Refuse to be swayed by appearances, for they are nothing but yesterday's assumptions made visible. Fix your gaze upon the invisible reality you choose. Walk in it, feel it, know it, until the outer must bow in obedience to the inner decree. Life yields to the bold. It bends to the one who knows that imagining creates reality and who dares to persist in that truth until it hardens into fact. Let no fear whisper to you that it is too late, too difficult, or too much to ask. The universe responds not to the timid heart, but to the unwavering vision of one who has claimed their inheritance. Therefore, go forth from this moment with the quiet certainty that you are the master of your own destiny. Let every thought be chosen with care, every feeling guarded with vigilance, for these are the seeds from which your tomorrows will grow. Stand in the end and live there now. And as you do, you will find that all things will conspire, seen and unseen, to bring to you the fulfillment of your deepest desire in ways so natural you will marvel that it was ever once only a dream.